Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Hamster Business Show. My name is Chris Pastrana, and today we are here with Amy Cann of Human Resources ROI.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good. Thank you.
Cool. So let's get this started. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've been in HR for over 20 years, and I actually was 18 in college, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to be when I grew up, and most of us are still deciding, exactly what path anyway. But at 18, I thought HR sounded interesting. I like people. I thought, how easy are the people are easy? How easy will this be? And I kind of fell into HR, and I'm so glad that I did because it turned out to be just an enjoyable career, and there's such variety, and you can help people, and you learn. There's just challenges. There's so much to it. So for me, I was lucky that I fell into my career early.
Yeah.
Because I also teach, and I run into people frequently that they're still trying to decide what they want to do when they're in their 40s or 50s. And so I feel fortunate that I picked the right career for me, a long time ago. And I have a background in education. I have an MBA and undergrad in psychology and HR, and some of the usual backgrounds that you might have in HR.
Yeah.
So, and I started my business last year, so on my own, and I have a partner that I just brought on too.
Okay.
So, I'm hoping to just be able to help companies and work around New Hampshire, Southern Maine, and Northern Mass for as long as I'm able to walk around.
Yeah. So what is human resources? That's probably a good place to start.
Well, it's got a lot of definitions. It's a great point. A lot of times we think of really the HR police. You think of okay, we're enforcing policies. And when I started HR years ago, that's what I felt like I was the HR police. I was enforcing policies and making sure people do what they're supposed to do and all that. And I realized that's not the most helpful approach. That, you really want to be more a partner and a coach and be proactive and preventive. And in the long run, your company will save money and people will be happy working there. They'll stay. They'll be more engaged in their work because they feel like people care. And so I really adopted a change in my philosophy probably, 5 years into my HR career, and I realized, those things that, you really need to be an advocate and more of a positive force of change and supportive and coaching and not the HR police. But it encompasses a lot. I mean, it really encompasses from employee relations, performance management, talent management, recruiting the right people, identifying the right jobs, creating a brand so that people can identify who you are and that you attract the right people that have the similar values of your company. It goes into training and development and workers' compensation, of course, benefits. There's compensation management. There's a lot of broad categories there, and then there's also safety management, which runs parallel with HR, and I have a background in safety management as well. I'm a certified safety manager. So for me, keeping the safety and HR piece going parallel is important. I see the value of that. So I help clients on the safety side as well as the HR side.
Okay. So there's a whole lot in that one. So a lot of it, paperwork. Let's just start with.
There's some.
That's probably.
Yeah, but I'm not an administrative person, so that for me, and especially being a consultant, you don't do much of that. There's reporting, matrix that you want to, metrics that you want to track. So there is some of that, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, I'm trying to just get a handle on everything.
Sure, I know. I threw a lot out there. But you're right, because there are, the compensation and benefits, that's a big piece. So, record keeping, of course, I-9s, making sure that people are eligible to work in the United States. There's certainly very much paperwork. I write handbooks and redo handbooks. So there's the paperwork administrative piece of it too. And some of it's really just making sure that your regulatory compliance is in place. And that's the drier part of HR. That's the paperwork administrative side you're thinking of, but it's necessary for compliance. And then from there, there's other levels that you get into that are more interactive.
Yeah. Okay. Because I know recently I was looking at bringing on, sales associates to kind of push the other half of my thing. Yeah. And I'm like, I have no idea where to even begin with that. So I was like, let's reach out to an HR person, which I'm glad that's why I found you. And I'm like, because I have so many questions about just. Yeah, I'd be happy to help. And as I mentioned, I run into a lot of brand new businesses. So these people who are looking to grow or looking to grow soon, and the one thing that they always tell me is, there a ton of time is spent doing their business. And then one gentleman was like, do the business, and then he at 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock in the morning, he'll start doing the paperwork and the finances and all this stuff. And I'm like, your money is directly tied to your time, and a lot of that you're bottlenecking, choke holding kind of into that that admin side where you could probably free some of that up.
Absolutely.
So that was why I wanted an HR person on here that we can talk about a lot of that stuff. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I use the same concept too at my office. We have a collaborative office environment I work in, and we have administrative support. So delegating some things to that team, which is they're great. I mean, quality conscious. They're adept with technical background and all. Delegating so that you can focus on what makes your company money is really important. You're right, because otherwise you're not going to get where you want to be if you're stuck in the weeds. So it makes perfect sense, and that's why people often outsource HR, because they don't want to spend the time trying to deal with all the intricate application of the laws and the time that involves to have to solve a problem once it's already there. Where I come in is being more preventative and proactive, and we can have a framework so that you don't lead to that problem, which is going to spend a lot of your time and money sometimes. And unfortunately, people call me when sometimes they already have a problem already. Yeah. If they catch me early enough, we can really solve it before it's becomes really expensive and legal side of things and disruptive to the morale and really causes lingering effects. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I think you should focus on what you do well, and then try to delegate or outsource, hire people that are experts in the things that you don't do well, that aren't core to your business. Yeah,
because like I mentioned, because you can only do so much with your time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you spend all your time doing your product, that's cool. But then you spend it doing paperwork, where I'm like, well, I'd rather be working on my product. So you might spend a little bit, but then you can make more.
Absolutely.
And then you hire employees who can do that part of it, and you can work on something else. And so, yeah, it's kind of like a time management thing, just kind of,
Right. Plus, you want to get you're right. And then you want to get the work-life balance in there too. So even if you're, a business owner, I mean, there's still work-life balance, that you need to have, and some downtime to recharge and relax. And whether you're streaming Netflix shows, or you're playing soccer or whatever you're doing. I mean, time with your kids. I mean, you want to have downtime. It can't be all work, because then you start to burn out and you lose some of your creativity. I feel, and you're not problem solving as well, because your mind's tired and it needs a little break. So
you talked about creativity, and I started laughing because I get asked that all the time. They're like, how do you get creative? One, you have to be creative to kind of get creative, which is kind of funny. So you got to put yourself in situations where you can be creative. Go to a store with a bunch of art stuff, have fun, do something. Or lots of alcohol or something, but that's kind of the unprofessional side of it. But so let's talk, because you mentioned employee management earlier. And I don't get political, but all I see over the news now is just very poorly handled employee management just across the country. And I'm like, that's got to be a very interesting field to be in, at least for you.
Yeah, well, people tend to, you lead by example. So if your examples are not good, then unfortunately that does have negative effects on the workforce. There's not respect in there, and when there's not respect, people are frustrated, they're leaving, they're creating harassment, bullying situations, there's discrimination, there's a lackadaisical attitude that just deteriorates the culture. So I think leadership is the most important piece of it, is developing the mindset where you realize the impact that you have, and you want to set that ideal that you live to. You identify what are your company's values, and then you follow those. For example, I'm working with a company that they're big on collaboration, and they're big on transparency, and the problem solving together, going back to being collaborative. And so, and recognition to others, and taking responsibility for your role in something. And their president is just phenomenal with following exactly that. I mean, it sets the right tone, and people are just inspired by that. Now, go the other way, and you have someone who shirks responsibility, doesn't respect their employees, blames others, then that's exactly what's going to trickle down to your workforce, and people aren't going to be respectful. They're not going to be engaged. They're going to be paranoid that people are going to place blame on them. They're going to worry. People are going to lose your good people. Typically, your bad people will stay. It's the good people that you lose. So I mean, the leadership piece of it, and sometimes leaders get into that that mindset where they're just so focused on business growth or what's happening in the big picture, and they're not in the weeds. And you have to dip into the weeds because you need to know what's going on there, and you need to make sure that your presence is felt. And the whole saying that it's not what you say, it's what you do, and people do really observe what you do, and that really impacts. So a lot of times you see these things in news, and it's because leadership team either wasn't paying attention or they didn't care, and you feel it. These effects that we hear in the news with all the things happening, or just a lot of turnover. People are leaving because maybe there's nothing going on illegally, but as far as employment laws go, but they're not happy, they're not being valued, and they leave. So it impacts companies a lot.
So this is actually a very interesting segment we're about to get into, because talking about the turnover rate in a lot of companies, some industries are worse than others. You get like let's just say something like a car dealership or a Comcast. Turnover is super high. How do you work on something like that? Because I think that's a little bit higher business than I typically work with, but it's still a good area to like, where do you even focus on taking care of that type of problem?
Well, one thing you look at is the market. What's the market paying? What's the market offering in benefits? Can you meet that at least? Are you meeting it? There's 3 different ways to look at compensation. Really, there's we're going to exceed the market because we want the best of the best, and then there's meeting the market, which is what most companies do because that aligns with their budget and it aligns with their philosophy of being benchmarked with other companies. They want to at least meet similar companies' expectations and employees' expectations. And then you're going to be able to attract good core people. And then there's below market, which would be someone like typically nonprofits and some of the the lower profit margins. Sometimes your retail, small restaurants. Ones that have limited budgets and they're unable to go to market. For example, nonprofits are a big one, and I know that what you can do then is you offer things that other companies can't, perhaps flexible work schedules, and you offer recognition with titles and being developed so that you're able to get leadership skills, you're able to lead a team, do project management, develop skills you wouldn't necessarily get at the company that's paying the market. Because, they're not really worried about retention as much because they're paying market, or if they're paying above market, like a Microsoft, of course, is classic for Amazon's, a lot of them, the big companies like that, they're paying above market because they want the best kind of thing. But those that are paying at market, they don't always offer all the pieces because they feel like they're doing what they should be doing. So below market companies have to look at other creative, non-compensatory ways to satisfy their employees. And then saying that's still relevant to the companies that pay market or above market, because people, at the end of the day, your paycheck's one thing, but it doesn't make you feel good. It's not enough to make you feel good. What makes you feel good is feeling valued, and that's what the nonprofits typically have as an advantage for other companies, because what they're doing is socially, social promotion and benefits, and it helps people feel good about what they're doing. And if they have a good leadership team on top of it that values their people, then people feel like they're really appreciated and they're having learning opportunities, and then those people tend to stay even though they're making below market maybe salaries. That there's other things that are more important to them, and we're finding that newer generations like Generation Y and then of course Generation Z is coming up. It's really important to them that they're making an impact on what they do, and that they feel what they're doing is valued, and that there's a benefit to our community, on the social side of things. They'd rather take a job that makes less, that has a better impact and makes them feel appreciated, versus making $10,000 more at a company that's not going to value them and make them feel appreciated. So I think that there's different things you can look at as far as retention goes. But if you're finding a lot of turnovers happening, the best thing to do is doing extra interviews and find out why people are leaving, and talk to your people and get a sense of what the problems might be. It might not be what you think it is. Maybe there's a perception there that's not even accurate. Sometimes it's lack of communication because they feel there's a disconnect there. The more you know, the more you care. So if a leadership can talk to their people and let them know what's happening, like here's what we're expecting next year. Here's some clients we're hoping to get on, customers we're hoping to get on. Here's some challenges we've had. Don't just tell them all the good. You got to share the bad too, so they have a realistic view of the company. But the more you know like that, the more you get invested in it too. And so sometimes it's just a disconnect like that. Other times, it's ethical issues that go on. So there's or violations with, safety wise, if you don't feel like people don't feel like their health is your priority, people are gonna leave. So there's different causes for turnover, but I think you have to do really a root cause analysis and see what's really going on, not just the symptoms, but what's really going on, and then work to solve that. And that's where HR people come in. Yeah,
which is very interesting. The ethics portion of it, which I find very fun, because I worked for a lot of different companies over the years, even though I'm not that old. Ethics can absolutely kill a company. Like, just from top leadership down, even in a small company or even a big one, the way they go about business can really kick out some good employees. Like,
sure,
because you're good employees that stand by their reputation and stuff like that. They won't stay long in that type of environment.
Right.
And I've seen that quite a few times. I've left jobs because they legitimately told me, no, you want to lie to the customer, get the contract signed, and then when they're gone, we'll move on to the next guy. And I'm like, no, we're good. We're not working together anymore. And I think that's just a problem across the board sometimes.
Right. And if they're treating their customers like that, they're treating their employees like that too.
Yeah.
It's not that they have this nice side and there's the bad side with the customers. I mean, they're going to probably be pretty consistent with their approach to their employees. And like you mentioned, car dealerships, they get a bad rap, just like lawyers and other professions, and they get a bad rap at times because, that high pressure sales atmosphere does turn people off and can push their ethical boundaries. And I think, car dealerships would just need to look at how can we level the playing field so our people don't feel like they have to be, these professional BSers, to get customers and to stay here and feel valued. I mean, how can we, what can we do to make it a different environment and make sure that, they have a voice and they feel like they're respecting and they can feel like they can be honest and sincere in their job and still be productive. So I think it's probably like a little, it's a challenge, I'm sure, in some environments to get away from, the ethical boundary there. But I think you have to, because like you said, you'll lose good people, and that turnover just really hurts your company for a variety of reasons. I mean, it costs money to retain people, to recruit people, and that lack of continuity when you have changing workforce. I mean, you lose knowledge. Customers are turned off by it. People badmouth people on Glassdoor.com. Like if you go to Glassdoor.com, that's employee website for the most part. Employers can come on there, they can link to their company, and they can then start have a voice on their profile. But it's initially started by the employees, and Glassdoor.com will, if you go on there, you can pick any company, and most companies are going to have a profile there, whether they know it or not, and they're going to have some negative comments, whether they know it or not. And so that's another way you can learn what's going on in your company too. I mean, you don't really want to wait till it's publicly put on social media. That's not ideal. But if you monitor that type of thing, you can get a handle on it. You can respond to the remark online so that when applicants check out your company, they're not seeing this negative comment and then you haven't even addressed it. So I think, it's just like anyone making a mistake, you need to learn from it. And then you make a change so it doesn't happen again. And employers are the same way. I mean, people are going to make mistakes and have policies that don't work and other things happening. But as long as you learn from it, solve it, and move forward, then you can recover and become a good employer for people that want to work there.
Yeah. Now, as an HR person, it might be a little different because you're kind of outside of a company. Would you actively be looking for that type of situation so you can address them beforehand? Or do a lot of people just keep their head down and not try to address that with the boss?
A good HR person is going to be proactive and bring forth any problems. Like, people don't need yes people. I mean, you need people that are going to tell you how it is. And so, every HR person I personally know is someone that's going to speak up when they see an issue. They're going to do their very best to help solve it. And, they're going to present options for solutions to their, whoever they're reporting to, whether it's a president, CEO, or whoever it is. So, yeah, I mean, you definitely don't want to sit there and just, hide under, the covers. I mean, you have to address these things. And, and maybe there'll be times where, there's going to be a disconnect for the HR person's point of view where, they're bringing these things forward, they're not being heard, and they leave and go somewhere else. I mean, but if you don't try to bring it forward and give people the opportunity to take action, then you're not doing your job in HR. So, I mean, you have to you're an advocate for the employees and the business. And typically what's good for the employees is good for the business.
Yeah.
If employees are happy, it's good for the business. If employees aren't suing the company, that's great for the business. I mean, there's everything that's happening in the employees-wise. If they feel like they're valued and appreciated, they're going to stay, they're going to put more effort forth, that's good for the company. I mean, there's rarely a time where something's good for the company but not for the employees, and you're not going to have that that dual impact there. So it's a disservice if you're not speaking up on the HR side, in my opinion. But that said, I know it's easy to feel like you don't have that option if there's not a voice.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's happened sometimes in past with some companies. Sometimes you'll see a high performer who's a problem, and the HR person knows that there's no way they're going to fire the high performer even though they're a problem. And so they kind of just put a blind eye to it. And, that's reality sometimes. It's just the way it is. You can do what you can, but sometimes you're not effective. And again, that's why HR people will sometimes leave companies too. I mean, they feel like they've done what they can, and that's all they can do. And
yeah.
So, those are my thoughts. I tend to be more an advocator and proactive. So I always spoke up.
Yeah.
Any of my previous bosses can tell you that.
That's good. Because, again, it comes back to that ethics issue where, good people leave regardless if it's HR or employees.
Yes.
And you want to address that. And you also want to find a company, not like you had mentioned, some companies don't care about the employees so much because they can hire more. Mm-hmm. And some of them are really good. Mm-hmm. And maybe they don't pay as much, but they have phenomenal management and they're growing. Yes. Who knows? So I think that's important to look at too, just this how the company handles it. Because mm-hmm. I've had bosses. I've had companies where as soon as the boss leaves after an interview, mm-hmm. like I just look at the employees. I'm like, what's it actually like working here? Mm-hmm. And you get a little more idea of what it's like, and you can make better judgments that way. But
actually, Chris, that's a great point too, because when people are interviewing, if you don't give the person the full picture of your company, then there's a chance they're going to leave. I mean, statistically, they're finding that 1/3 of a new employees coming aboard will only stay 6 months mm-hmm. because there's a disconnect from what they thought the job was from what it really is, or sometimes it's the employer thought they needed this, they really needed this, so they hired the wrong person. That disconnect happens. So the more you can communicate and allow people a chance to talk to their potential coworkers, they get a better feel for the idea. And some companies do like a job shadow for applicants. They'll mm-hmm. come in and then you do an interview, and then you'll shadow the department for a bit to get a feel for what, especially customer service reps, even on the phones. You sit there and you get an idea of what it's really like. Because people come in with false impression of it through no one's fault, and it's they're not going to last, they're not going to do well, they're not going to be happy, and then the employer's right back having to spend the money recruiting, training, and going through the process. In the meantime, it looks like, there's a lot of turnover, which then employees feel like there's something else going on, other than just a bad hiring decision. They feel like there's something else going wrong, and then they start to worry, and then it can, domino effect from there. So I think really identifying, what the job you really need, and then what knowledge, skills, and abilities are important. There's the KSAs. Basically, what do you need to know now? What skills like Excel do I need to have Excel now? And what's my ability level? Do I have to be able to learn calculus in this job, because that'll disqualify me right off the top. Yeah. But they, you need to know, and then you have to know, like, what can we learn and teach the person? What can that person learn when you teach the person? So I've seen employers sometimes they'll require this person to have this, and like, well, can we teach them that? If they have that, but they don't have that, but they have an awesome personality, isn't that better than we get somebody with a personality, but they've got that? So you have to you really have to look at what we really need now, and just make sure it's the clearest job profile, and then you give the person a chance to really understand it. So if we were interviewing you, Chris, you want to make sure that you knew, the good and the bad. Okay, mm-hmm. Here's what's great about the job, but this is what our pay is. It's what our budget is, all we can afford. This is what the benefits are. This is what we can afford with it. You're going to have some problems. You're going to have some complaints. I mean, give the reality of it, because they're going to find it out anyway. Mm-hmm. If you're not upfront about it, then you're just wasting everyone's time in the long run and causing headaches for yourself. So just be honest and upfront. And I think most people will appreciate that. Yeah.
So kind of a funny little horror story, just as before I get back to another point I was going to make. So my wife worked for a company, I'm not going to name them, and she got hired on answer the phones to solve customers' problems, like they had an issue with something that they sold, Mm-hmm. And that's what she was hired on. Pick up the phone, you have a little script, fix the problem, thank you, done. That's all she did. And you find out later on after being hired that no, part of your job is also sales. Oh, so that is a big disconnect mm-hmm. when it comes to I just wanted to read this script, and all of a sudden no, part of your job quota every month is you have to be making sales. You're not the sales team. That's somebody else. but you have to be making sales, even if it's only a few. And that's like, it's a pretty big disconnect for a company.
Absolutely.
But that was just a little horror story that you were talking about. Maybe be upfront about that beforehand.
Yeah, because some people like the challenge of that, you know. But...
Yeah, like I love sales. It's so much fun. But you know, someone like my wife isn't a salesperson. She got hired on to read a script and answer a phone and fix your little problem, and then goodbye. You know, call me again when you have a problem.
Right.
Not like, oh well, let's upgrade your package to something else, and you're like, oh god, I have to sell something. So just kind of a funny thing.
She didn't stay very long, I'm guessing.
Oh no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because and they have a very high turnover, which is what I was talking about earlier. So like. We talked about big companies and stuff like that and some issues they have. Now, I get a lot of small companies in here. So, like I said, people is just, they're solo people, they're solopreneurs, whatever you want to call them. Maybe an LLC, whatever, they're small, one person. Looking to start growing, have no idea how to go about, you know, the hiring, all this stuff. Like, where do they start in that process? Like, let's just say hiring. Like, where do they start when they want to look for an employee?
Well, I think the first step is, like I mentioned, is really identifying what you really need and that you're really clear on the qualifications that will make the person successful. So what do they absolutely have to have right now? What I'd like to have and what's, you know, a nice add-on. And, you know, having a great job profile is number one. And then part of it's branding. You're like, who are you? You know, what perception do you want to put out there in the public? That's going to make a difference because it's going to appeal to different people. So if you're a company that's really growing and there's a lot of entrepreneurial opportunities for, you know, someone coming aboard as an employee, that's going to really appeal to people that like that sense of adventure. There's others it's not going to appeal to because for them they like the sense of comfort of having established norms.
Yeah, like a huge company, like it's not going anywhere. It's not a risk.
They don't like uncertainty.
Yeah.
So I think you really have to understand, like, you know, who you are and what image you want to put out there. And then, you know, it's applying proper social medias too. Like I'm big on Instagram, you know, Facebook, LinkedIn, of course. I have some YouTube videos I did for a training I did, and then I have Google Plus, and I have my website, of course. So, and then I watch what other people are saying and doing so you can get, you know, some interactions going too. But, you know, having a social media presence, and I think you do some of that, if I'm not mistaken, Chris. So you can help people with that. But you really have to, you know, establish some presence because nowadays people are overloaded with information and we don't have a lot of time. We don't have the desire to read anything lengthy or do a lot of research. We want to see it visible, available, and so you need to have that strategy of making sure that your company is visible, available. And I'm very big on visual ads. I use Adobe Spark a lot now, and it's great about presenting. We used it before about using like or making like posts that are very visual, like a visual ad, and you can do a lot of job ads that way now with a, you know, really visual image that captures your company or the role in maybe a funny way. Doesn't have to be funny, but, you know, something that captures it, and then, you know, mention the job opening, you know, your company contact information, or your company logo, which will link like maybe a, you know, do a landing page to your website if they click on it, kind of thing, and draw people in that way. Unemployment is very low in New Hampshire. It's not quite as low in Maine and Mass, but, you know, we're still competing with them for jobs as well, for candidates and all. So I mean, you really have to. It's a competition for recruiting, is the way I look at it. I wrote a paper on competitive recruiting because to me it is a competition. So you want to make sure you're out there, you're appealing, you're open, you're presenting your values, and then as you start to get candidates applying, you know, then you really need to look at the behavioral side of things and talk about, you know, how they've handled things in the past, how they handle things going forward, making sure they don't use a lot of I. You know, they're talking about, well, they, we, you know, I collaborated. You know, you can see that they're someone who works well with others. You don't want someone who's going to blame others, not take responsibility, not be accountable, not give, you know, 100%. So you really, at that point, the interview process is really, it's investigation to figure out this person, and you only have limited criteria. So, you know, you really want to make sure you're asking the right questions that suit your values. At that point, bringing them on, I mean, of course, there's an I-9. You know, I've had someone before who thought that you only had to do an I-9, which is something with immigration to show you have the right to work in the United States, that you only had to do an I-9 if the person was going to stay. So, if they were there a couple of days and they left, it was, you don't have to worry about that. But you actually do need to have them sign that form, the I-9, which you can obtain right off of the INS's website the first day they're employed there. Mm-hmm. They have a couple of days to get documentation to you if they don't have it available, but you need to do the I-9. And of course, there's W-4, and there's all the usual paperwork that you want to establish. Workers' compensation, if you're going from a sole person to +1, then having workers' compensation is required for any employee. Professional liability insurance, making sure that doesn't cover, if applicable, that employee as well. And then what kind of benefits you're going to offer, if anything. Being really upfront to the employee, telling them that, look, this is what I can offer you, but I can't offer you this yet. Once we get more revenue, then we can start adding on other benefits. Just being really upfront so that they're not going to come aboard and they're going to go, well, you didn't tell me that, or I didn't know that. You want to be as transparent as possible. And then from there, really, this is the onboarding process, making sure that they're integrated into your company. They have the resources and tools. I've worked at companies before where, years ago, where people didn't have a computer when they first started. And so they're sitting at the desk and, and they're having to observe other people, and it's not a good start. When you hire somebody, make sure you're 100% ready to go with them. Maybe there's business cards that will follow or this and that. Make sure they have the technology to start right away. They have all the tools they need, and then you're prepared, because that starts, first impressions is important. That's the first impression when someone starts their first day. That's huge too. And, going forward from there, just making sure you're compliant with employment laws. And, I wish it was a secret, but they're all out there. New Hampshire Department of Labor, has a great website. The U.S. DOL, Department of Labor, has a great website. OSHA has a great website. Whatever states you're in, they have great websites to help employers be compliant. And if any of that sounds horribly confusing and complicated, then call me. Yeah,
because that's what I was going to bring up. Like, you say, they have these great websites with all the information, but that's super confusing. Like, that's insane. Like, because I got my OSHA 30 certification a while ago, but oh my God, like, there's so much to all of it. Yeah. And even the professor, the dude who taught it, was like, I'm not even going to teach you all of it, because he told you some of it, and it's just, and that's just OSHA 30. That's not even like everything else, like management, and then W-2s, what's the difference between W-2 and a 1099, and it's just, you get that whole variety of things. So that's why, again, I brought you on so that we could talk about this, and then, point someone in your direction if they need help, because they really need help.
Well, like I have a client now who's one of my dedicated clients that I work with. I offer dedicated services, so I work with them just long term, and as many hours as they need me. And then I do like project work, and then sometimes it's just a couple hourly, an hourly project where they really just need an hour of some consultation. And I do complimentary consultations as well. But one of my clients, the one that's dedicated, he said, he's like, I don't have time to figure this out. I just really want this. What do I need to do? That's where you come in with all this kind of thing. And, that's true with any, I think, subject matter expert, that, you can get right to the bottom line, whereas like with you, like you can get to the bottom line on so many things, where somebody else is going to have to spend hours and trying to figure it out, and they may not even get it right, and that's not a good use of their time. So I think it's that's why we have specialties, because it makes the person stronger and more knowledgeable about that particular focus, and that's where HR comes in, because employment laws are changing rapidly. Interpretations in court, court cases drive how we apply employment laws too. Of course, the U.S. Supreme Court has definitely a huge footprint on employment law interpretation and decisions. The Hampshire Labor Relations Board as well, whether union or non-union, they have a lot of impact on how we handle employment laws, especially around social media, because people have to have a chance to mutually collaborate for their own protection, and there's a fine line there where employers could violate it if they're not careful with their phrasing in employee handbooks, for example. So it gets like, and people are like, oh my God, I want to know all that, and that's why clients come to me, because they don't even want to know all that. They just want to know what they need to do, because they want to be compliant, they want to do the right thing, but they're not sure what that is.
And I think, again, I try not to get political, but I think sometimes the good intent of the policies get a little like they hurt more than they help.
Sure.
But I get it. You're starting a business. You're a brand new person. It's like, I know how to talk to people. That's like my job. My friend, he makes holsters for like firearms. Like, that's what we do. We make holsters for firearms. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, how do I do all this paperwork and all this stuff? And it can be a little daunting.
Yeah, a good CPA is important too for some of that
as
too.
Well, yeah. And then, like as I mentioned earlier, the just the hiring process itself can be so tricky with, the rules and regulations on questions you're allowed to ask the person, and then so it's good to have an expert in your corner.
Definitely.
To take a shot of that.
I just had someone join me as a partner, as a senior talent consultant. Her name's Laura Sullivan, and she has a really strong background in exactly that. She's actually writing articles on, interview red flags, for example, like, what's a warning sign, in an interview where, you're like, okay, you want to wrap it up and just say, thanks for coming, because it's just going to go bad from there. Little things that people give you as tip-offs. And she's really good at engaging applicants and wanting them, getting them to want to work at a company and helping managers with the whole process. So, you're right. It can be overwhelming, and it's time consuming too. So you really, it's not only is it tricky, it's time consuming and it's expensive. So it's, again, that's why, we look at other options for outsourcing, like, whether it's me or another consultant. There's staffing agencies. Staffing agencies are great, but they're very specific what they do. We expand way beyond that, from the very start of job profiling to the end of onboarding, and then, their employment throughout the company. So, but you're right. It's it can be a lot, just like any profession. If I was to delve into being a mechanic at an automotive shop, I'd be lost.
Just like how crazy it all is,
Yeah, there's so much to things. So I think that makes it great. We have so many options to what we like to focus on, and But
cool, awesome. Well, let me see here. That was a lot of the questions I generally had. So how do people get a hold of you?
Well, we have a website. It's humanresources-roi.com. And we're also on social media, of course, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Google+. YouTube is not really up and running yet. It's kind of hidden. You have to really be determined to find it, because I have a bunch of videos, but I haven't done quite anything with that just yet. And then, of course, LinkedIn's a great mode of connecting with professionals too. So I encourage everyone to check out LinkedIn and establish their own profile, and start reading people's articles, sharing. You learn a lot from just articles on LinkedIn. So I love LinkedIn too. And like I said, we're located at Pease Tradeport. So we have offices there, training facility room there as well. And then we go out in the field and venture out into southern Maine, New Hampshire, and northern Mass, usually Essex County.
Cool, awesome.
Yeah.
Was there anything else you wanted to talk about?
Thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate that. It was fun, because I can talk about what I do, and because I really love HR, I can talk about it all day. So we can keep going if you want. But I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, definitely so much. Okay, so thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions, definitely reach out, because we want to make New Hampshire the best place to live in the country. I think we can be, and I think that's what we need to do. So, okay, so until next time.
Thank you.